Right. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm so excited once again. We are wrapping up the Women's Month, and we've been talking for a long time, that we just wanted to make sure that we extend and expand the conversation beyond the International Women's Day, because I think that this month is very important. I think it's the only time we have as women to really talk about issues that impact us and issues that will, uplift us to the next level. And so today we welcome another amazing speaker, Miss Margaret Tendai Mwale. I'm gonna introduce her. I don't like introducing people when they're available, because I feel like uh, it's good to hear from the owner. Sometimes when you introduce people, you don't really do justice to who they are. So I'm gonna just kind of like highlight some of the work that she does and her achievements. But I will ask her again to tell us about herself. And the thing with introducing people is that when we introduce people, we know them superficially. So like I know Miss Margaret professionally, but I love to know people as people. And so yeah, today we have Miss Margaret Mwale. She is a dedicated professional with a passion for social work, mental health advocacy, and community engagement. She has a master's and a bachelor's degree in social work. I love social workers because I think this world would be chaotic if we didn't have social workers. So I'm really excited to have you here. Her commitment to making a positive impact is further demonstrated in her training in the African civic engagement. She she's a licensed social worker, in addition to being a USA certified youth mental health and first aider. So I think that tells a lot about the content that we're going to hear from today, from her today, that I can imagine that she's very empathetic. She comes from a place of, trauma informed, because she's worked with vulnerable populations. I want to stop there for now, and I will call upon Miss Margaret to tell us the other pieces. But I think the most important piece that I'm also looking for is, I want to know you beyond these accolades, and I want to know you, who you are as a person, because I know that as women, we do so many things and we wear so many caps. We are the ones, holding the fort in our communities, in our families, and making sure that we are raising communities, we are raising children and other things else. So I want to know that piece as well. So the floor is all yours, and I'm really, really excited. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Miss Margaret to this webinar.
Thank you very much, Togo, for welcoming me and pumping me up beyond what maybe I could have said about myself. Now I don't even know if what I say about myself will reach out to that expectation, but I'm glad that I'm here. I'm thankful for Weinspire as well, for this opportunity to allow me to come here and chat with everyone and share what I know. But yeah, just to add on what you've said, I am, as you've rightly heard, a social worker, very passionate about the work that I do. I've trained social work as for my life, for part of my career. I'm currently working with Irish Law of Law International as the Alternative Justice Program Officer. But as an individual, I'm just someone who lives, runs social work, like I said, passionate about mental health. You come into my spaces, and those are some of the conversations that you usually have me talking about. Am I raising the next generation? Unfortunately, not yet. But I do interact with a lot of young people through offering different psychosocial support and counseling. Also, part of the work that I do works with young people. So I do provide them with different opportunities for change, because I work with children that are in conflict with the law as part of my work.
Miss Margaret, I think that on its own, you're raising the next generation. Just period. Like, let's just say it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, briefly I think about myself, but yeah, I do a lot. I try to do a lot. I try to be involved. I'm someone who enjoys being there for people, helping people. I'm a rescuer. Part of what I'm going to speak about even today is going to tap onto those aspects of who I am and the things that I do and why I do the things that I do somehow and the things that I've got to learn as a woman. I think part of why I'm here is because of that. So it's not just for women. I speak to both men and women. My work is not biased towards men and women, but one of the issues that I felt when we talked about Women's Month is something that I feel is a blockade and a barrier that we as women sometimes have, which are these stereotypes that come up. I think maybe there was a breakdown in communication between myself and Togo in terms of putting it together, but it's supposed to be empowering women, but breaking stereotypes, and toxic is one of those stereotypes that comes in. So basically, but it's still the same thing that you would talk about, because these are things that hinder us and block us, and these are lessons from my experience, things that speak to me, and I'm hoping could speak to everyone else as we're here this afternoon. So I don't know, Toba, you guide me in terms of how
Awesome.
we
Yeah.
could. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So, we've heard from Miss Margaret. I wanted to ask you in terms of how long have you been with the Irish rule of law, and what really inspired you to become a social worker?
Um, I've been with Irish Rule of Law. This is my third year now. I just completed my second year, so this is my third year now. Um, what inspired me to be a social worker? Trust you me, I never dreamt that I would one day be a social worker. But I always believe, because I'm a believer myself, someone who's faithful. And I think God does have a path and a pattern for people, and He aligns us into that path as we move about in our day-to-day lives. So as a believer, I believe it was a fate because my who I am kind of aligned to this profession. And if you would ask me, um 10 years 10 years ago, if I thought social work was something that I was passionate about, I wouldn't say that to you, because I was still studying for my bachelor's degree. But it was through when I had completed and I had started to teach social work as a staff associate, because I started as a staff associate, when I realized what a powerful tool that I was holding, and how much this profession really aligned to me. When I started to share about the profession to other people, the next generation, was when I realized, how I re I was happy to become a social worker, because I felt like it equipped it gave people that power, like superpowers, because people call social work sometimes it's the superpower that we have to go out and save the world and try to work with different groups of people. So then I would say that's when I got to build that power, and then moving on to do my master's just added on to that fuel, and that's why I became a social worker. So if you ask me now why I became a social worker, I don't know why I became a social worker. I got to be a social worker, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. So social work is the best thing that ever happened to me, because it gave me powers to go out there and inspire people, help people, and try to help be a support for different groups of people, and try to resolve issues and problems within different communities. So yeah.
Awesome. I think social workers are superheroes. That's just me in my opinion. Uh, so yeah, talking about today's topic, breaking toxic stereotypes. What does that look like? What do you mean when you talk about toxic stereotypes, and how does that really align with women empowerment and women?
Um, Toko, maybe before you push it to me, I'd like to also give people within the audience an opportunity to say something. I want to put it out there and say, what are some of these stereotypes that we hear or we see that women are called, or we as women, or as a woman you've been called?
Mm.
What are some of the things that you hear people say about women in terms of stereotype?
And we
What
can
would you
drop it in the chat, or you can just
Yeah,
unmute.
you can unmute
Yeah.
yourself or you can drop it in the chat. So what are some of these stereotypes? Maybe before I comment. So
Anyone? So people in this webinar have never been called names, right?
no, well, sometimes it's not about that, but maybe people but maybe for the sake of moving forward. But see, one of the things that I know about women, breaking these stereotypes that we have, most of the times I hear people, oh, you never qualified for a job, you only got connections. Yeah. So basically, those would be stereotypes where um you would be, yeah, it's things like that that happens. And it's not just about connections. Sometimes people would even go to the extent of saying you might have had a sexual relation with someone else, or you might have flirted or had a thing with someone. There's always that thing that comes on to women, but you'll find that people, the stereotypes that we get, usually people call women emotional. They'll call us very emotional beings. And then people will they'll call us toxic. I know this word, people usually will call things toxic relationships, but then usually it will be women, even women calling other women. And it's not just, please don't get me wrong, it's not just about men. I'm not saying men, but I'm saying people. Why I'm saying people is because it's a combination of men and women who give these labels to say, women, we're very toxic. We even say it among ourselves, we're very toxic, or we're very emotional, or you find people call ourselves dramatic, can be dramatic and things like those. So there's always some of these stereotypes that will come up. And when you're constantly being reminded of those things, so we're linking to what we're saying in terms of women empowerment, being continuously labeled emotional, being continuously labeled toxic, you're being constantly labeled dramatic, pushes you back. Your pushes you back. Yes, women bosses are hard to deal with. Tamandani is saying that, and these are some of the labels that are attached to that, because you're like, they're very toxic, they're very emotional, they're very dramatic people. So then there'll be bosses, very difficult bosses, hard bosses to deal with. But, because society kind of works around your individual insecurities, these build on bringing in insecurities. These build on affecting your personal, your self-esteem. They hit on your self-esteem, and they hit on you as an individual, and they make you feel like you're not worthy, you're not good enough. And I love that Tamadani brought this to say female bosses are hard to deal with. But why are they hard to deal with? It's because they have so much, they have to break those insecurities, come beyond those, those self-esteem, and come out so that they command or demand that respect from people, because they've never had it. They've never had it. So they have to, they have to try harder in terms of trying to command that, because failure of which people are going to take advantage of that and break them. So they build these walls that they don't want you to hit on, because they're protecting themselves. So they're going to be that tough person because they're trying to protect themselves from being bullied. They're trying to protect themselves from those insecurities and all those other things. And most of the times you find that most women, we struggle to be empowered because we're we we struggle with all these things that we've grown up with. There's all these environments that we've been exposed to, which have us to be submissive. Someone's spoken about this as well, to be submissive, to be quiet, timid, people that would try to always submit to things and accept things as they are. You can't stand up in front of men, to be put down, to be on the ground, and all those things, to say today you want to empower a woman by giving her education, by giving her books. You want to give her all these things, but you're not giving her that voice. You're not giving her that courage and strength that she can look at herself, to be comfort within herself and her body, to break all those stereotypes that were given to her. You haven't given her that opportunity. It's very hard for her to be fully empowered. So maybe in a nutshell, so I would speak to things like that. Yeah.
You've touched a very important point, Margaret. I had a conversation with one woman. So this is a friend that I've had for a long time. I mean, a friend in the sense that we went together to school, and we've been educated together, and like our paths kind of like align. And this lady keeps on chasing after certifications and degree, and then she would do a second degree, a third degree, and then first master's, second master's, third master's, and then she's doing another certification. And so I paused and asked her, I said, what are all those for? you know um Deeper into our conversations, we realize that yes, it's good to accumulate all these, but sometimes it's our insecurities. And I'm just aligning this to what you've said, that sometimes we think that empowerment would come in form of being educated, and education is good, but sometimes you really need to look deep within, and have that voice and have that confidence within yourself, and tell yourself that I am enough. Because I've worked with a lot of amazing women in different circles who are really doing amazing, but they don't trust themselves because of what the society have labeled them, because the society have called them names, because the society has put labels on them, and they have grown to believe that. So I really think that is so important, that we need to begin to give each other like that voice and the confidence to say, I am enough.
And let me add this for you, Togo. I want to share my personal experience, because you've spoken about someone we don't know, but I want to say my own experience. Um, when I struggled myself with school at some point, and part of the reason why I did is because I went through a lot of mental health issues, but I was very young to realize that I had been processing so many things mentally, which affected how my progression in terms of academics. And it led me into a space where I really struggled to find my foot in terms of me being able to achieve what I wanted to do. So, like for instance, I'll walk you through some of my experiences, because what did happen to me was I was in primary school, and I think because I was very young, as children, we're not able to process a lot of things and realities about our life, about our environment, the things that have happened to us, or the things that we've been through. And then when we get to an adolescent stage, we get to start to make sense and get ground of understanding of things that we've been through as an individual, and then put the realities of those things and how they affect you. So we process so many things. And when I had got into secondary school, trust you me, Togo, I never ever did well. I don't think I even put progress. I wasn't really working hard. I was just defeated because I was going through so many things mentally. And that really pushed me back in terms of trying to achieve things. And I really struggled. And I'll tell you this, I repeated Form 3 twice. I
Mm.
wrote my Form 4 exams twice. I went to Chanza College. I was withdrawn in the first year. And those are like 5 years. I always say 5 years of my life that people think went away. But when I did get on my foot and got a ground and was able to start to do better and, get on progress and progress, okay, I got to start to connect. And part of what saved me was also social work, because it also helped me to realize and look from the place of my background and start to make realities of these things and help me to heal from those spaces. And one of the things that happened to me, Togo, was when I was at a certain age, my father said to me a statement at these phases of my life when I never really used to do well. He said a statement to me and said, I don't think some of you I don't think you would understand what it means to achieve anything, you know? He
Mm.
made a statement to me because he realized I wasn't really progressing. There's nothing that I was achieving. It was like, okay, so you don't even know. But that statement really pushed me because Togo, it gave me a fighting spirit to prove something, you know. And I remember when he had died was when I was doing my final year of masters. And when I was doing that, when I went back to proceed with my studies, I had no effort and energy
Mm.
because I realized, that was a fuel because I had to prove something to this person. Now he's gone.
He's
What
gone.
is going to fuel me now? And I was challenged.
Wow.
Because
Wow.
I remember one of my lecturers saying to me and saying, you know what, Margaret, we're not gonna, you have to, because I had started absconding my meetings for my thesis. And he said to me, I'm not letting you extend your stay here. I'm not writing to your scholarship for them to extend that for you. So you're gonna be going home. So if
Yeah.
you want to go home, you need to get this done now.
Wow.
And I had to pull myself and I had to find strength within myself for something to push me to get into a place. So, like you're saying, sometimes because of certain insecurity, sometimes it's not just insecurity. Sometimes because we want to run away from certain spaces, we want to prove something to certain people. Sometimes because we want to pull ourselves out of certain spaces. So we keep doing these things, but is it for me? Does it make me happy? Or
Right.
does it frustrate me? Because then at the end of the day, you accumulate all these things and look at me. Where is this person? He's gone.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Not that, no offense, and I don't have anything against my dad. Everyone who knows me knows that was my best friend. But I'm just sharing these experiences so we can all relate because sometimes those spaces come from um, things that were said to us, things that happened to us in our lives at early stages of our lives. And what do we need to do? We need the help that we need. What happened to you should be the question. Yeah.
Wow, Margaret, I I really feel like I'm in a therapy session right now. Thank you so much for sharing that part of your story. I think that's very amazing that you can share with us because I think we go in circles as people and we go through trauma, even in our childhood that we never processed fully. And that keeps on, being carried forward into our adult life. I do a lot of coaching and counseling for leaders, and we look back into these things because these patterns and circles and cycles they follow us into adulthood if we are not careful. So I'm really grateful that you're able to share that part of story. I wanted to ask you a question because you mentioned something about finding strength within yourself. So like as women, sometimes we want to prove someone wrong, or we want to prove the society wrong. And the coming in of gender equity and other things else, sometimes there's misinterpretation. It's like a battlefield, and it's like, an extreme sport that we are in competition with men, and we want to prove the society wrong, and we want to do this. And so we chase after things that are not even meaningful to us, but because we want to prove a point, right? Can you talk about, like, how do we find strength within ourselves? Like, how do we get there?
So it's a process really, Togo. It's very unfortunate that most of us our systems, I think the African society um doesn't really value mental health.
Yeah.
And this is seen in terms of what the education that we get, the family environments that we grow up in, they all speak to that lack of value in our mental well-being.
Mm.
And Togo, you do coaching. I'm glad that you started by sharing also about the coaching that you do, and you talk to women leaders, and you look at where they come from, where their backgrounds come from, and the different traumas that they have. Yeah. And for me to gain ground as a woman, for me to move forward, I need to go back, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I need to go back,
Unfortunately, it's painful.
unfortunately, because
Yeah.
it's a very painful process.
Yeah.
I need to get in touch with who I am and why I am like that.
Yeah.
Because I have certain traits and things about me. So it's not just about the good things, but it's also about especially about the negative things, the things that trigger me and put me in a space where it 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 builds a barrier for me to progress,
Yeah.
because those spaces build barriers for me to progress. Because sometimes I'm going to lash out. Sometimes I'm going to be very angry. Sometimes I'm going to be very anxious and insecure. So either I'm going to flight or I'm going to fight. And I love how you've also spoken about the fact that as women, we think that the concept of gender equality has been wrongly preached.
Yeah.
It's been preached as if it's a fight against men. And what happens? It's a war. It's like you're starting a war. And what happens in a war? You start a war, the other person, and you expect someone to just sit and watch. No, what do? They retaliate. And that's why we do not progress, because we think that. So for me to gain ground within myself is that I need to develop a personal relationship with myself. And having a personal relationship with myself is about knowing myself. Who am I? Who is Margaret? What are her strengths? What are her weaknesses? And where do those strengths and weaknesses come from? And why am I like this? I always share my own personal experiences, Togo, because I don't want to speak about anyone else. Because I'm also human. Because I also have things that I go through every single day of my life that I try to progress. Um, there's simple things like I realize I'm an anxious person. I struggle a lot with a lot of anxiety. And
Mm.
anxiety is one of the issues that I really struggle with, even when it comes to attaching with people and interacting with people. Um, so I have to gain ground and try to understand and say, you know what? No, this is not even about what is happening now. It's about things that I'm trying to address, certain things that happened in my past.
Yeah.
So I get to understand my own body and my own feelings that I have. There are times when I get that anxiety, what happens? I get so angry. I feel myself boiling and I'm so mad. I feel like my head, I get to feel certain things happening within my head,
Yeah.
and I have to regulate. I know that at this point I have to regulate. Margaret, you're safe, you're okay. This person, what they've done does not deserve that type of a reaction. You're just reacting to things that probably happened. This is you trying to protect yourself, but you're not protecting yourself from this person. You are reacting to things that happen.
Mm.
You're just
And
having
mm.
emotional, you're having an emotional trigger. And
Mm.
that's the thing. So having a personal relationship with yourself is one of the best things that you could ever have. And that for that relationship to be healthy is for you to be able to heal from past experiences. What hurt you? Why are you like that? And why were you hurt? Um, I talk about this, Togo, because I know I tap on it, and sometimes I apologize that sometimes it might hit on my family in ways that they wouldn't understand, but I know that is part of my journey.
Right.
And I don't offend anyone because I love my family, every single one of them. But I grew up in a family where there were issues of alcohol. Alcohol was a big thing, and there was consumption of alcohol. And having in a family where there's issues of alcohol, it enables you to feel like, it creates uncertain environments. It creates an environment for you where you don't feel safe sometimes because you don't know what's going to happen. What are the moods? What are things? I'm not saying that it was the worst place to stay. No. But what I'm saying is it bred a certain trait of personality within me that I got to then understand and say, no, this is that child that was young, that always felt like something's gonna go wrong, something's gonna go bad. And they always built this, and then she feels insecure if people look at her in a certain way, they look at me in a certain way, and I'm like, oh gosh, what are they saying?
Yeah.
People have ignored me for a couple of days, and I'm like, oh shit, what have I done? I'm constantly checking myself, and so that's part of the relationship that I have with myself. And in those moments, I'm telling myself, no, Mikey, it's just that person, that child that grew up in that environment, and this is how she survived. And it's just me reminding myself of that and saying, this is not that space again. So you need to be okay with that happening. And you're okay. Nothing should threaten you. You should be okay with that. So basically that, all of that, knowing and also Togo, not just about your mind, but again also being in comfort with your own body. Because sometimes the things that really affect us are our appearance and how we look,
Yeah.
having that comfort within your body. So having a relationship with yourself is not just about me and myself and the conversations that I have with myself, but again, also being in comfort with my body. Yes. What do I feel about my body? How do I feel about it? What are the thoughts? What are the feelings? What do I need to forgive my
Mm.
body for? Because there's some things that I can't control. There are things that I can't control. How
Mm.
can I do better about it? And if I can't, why not? So all of those things help me to have, a very healthy relationship with myself. So as women to go through those spaces and phases of all our lives, and just understanding all of that puts us in a space where we can be able to progress better and do better and to be able to be more productive and pour out even more into the world. Yeah.
Oh goodness, I am so enjoying this session. Guys, if you don't understand that you are in a very free therapy session here, I want you to understand. Margaret, thank you so much because you're sharing from deep within. I think I really like it when we open up as women and talk about the traumas. And I know that it's not an easy journey of walking down the road to go into your past and really uncover some of those things that happened in your life. Because I see a lot of amazing women who sabotage themselves, and their sabotage is not because of anything else, but just traumas. And so when you carry trauma forward into your present life, and you are unable to identify those places, and you don't really have a good relationship with yourself, whoever says something from outside, it becomes a trigger, and you overreact, and then you sabotage yourself, and you go through cycles of emotions and other things else, and you ruin
And
things
then
that you
those
shouldn't have.
stereotypes come up.
And then those stereotypes become very pronounced, right? and then you take them to heart, and then you ruminate on them, and they become your reality, and then it's a cycle. So I'm really grateful that we are talking about this. Before I ask my next question, I want to see if there is anyone with a question, either in the chat or you can just unmute. This is a very good session. I like this because we really need to talk about these things. And thank you so much, Margaret. Any question before we move on? Okay, maybe not yet. All right. My other question, and we're gonna go through like the process of how now do we break those stereotypes. But I wanted to talk about generally because I know that in Malawi we don't really value therapy. We don't really have even moments of where we can just sit down and process. It's a process, guys, that we need to go through within ourselves, but it's a very intentional decision that you have to make. And sometimes it takes self-awareness to realize that you carry these traumas or you carry these traits that when you realize that, okay, I'm acting or reacting like this, not because of what has happened, but really I'm protecting and building walls around myself because I want to protect myself. So I wanted you to talk about that piece, to say, how can we as women really kind of like move out of, because it's culture too that we don't really seek therapy, because every time you talk about therapy with people, especially in my case, because I do a lot of coaching for women and for leaders, when I introduce the topic of, and I have to be careful too, it's like you're talking about this thing that that every time people hear me recommending them to say, I think you need to go for therapy and you need to, you need to talk to a therapist about these things, they'll look at me and think that I'm labeling them, that they have like mental health issues, right? What is your experience about that, and what can you tell us about that?
Um, Togo, for me, one thing I struggle with and I respect and understand is that much as we want people to seek help,
Hmm.
we don't have that much help in the country,
Mm.
unfortunately. And it's not accessible, it's not easily accessible, it's not affordable.
Right, right,
And it's not the most, it's not something that you can easily walk into. It's not a very something that would happen as easy as it is for you to get medication for any other things. At
mm,
least you have options also to go to a pharmacy, you
right.
go to a hospital, the physical health aspect of it. So I'm putting a disclaimer onto that because it's easy to say go out and seek help,
Yeah,
but where help is not available and conveniently available for people,
and
it's not fair
accessible.
for,
Yeah.
for us to do that. But
Mm.
what I do say is most of my journey in terms of healing has not been done by really seeking therapy as
Mm.
per se. It's been done by because I've been trained in the field. I'm aware of some of the things. I have sought therapy several times, but because of the issues I've also shared with you, Togo, the accessibility, the affordability, in terms of consistency, it's difficult. But I have embarked on a personal journey on my own to work on most of these areas. So reading about a lot of things, it helps. But again, for me to be someone who opens up platforms and spaces where we can have conversations, I'm someone who at least once or twice in your encounter with me, you would have had a conversation around mental health. And when people share experiences and situations that they're going through, I usually make it a point to process things
Mm.
with them. Where is it coming from? And I know I've had people backlash. from people as well, because sometimes you tap on spaces that people don't want you to talk about. But when they do sit down and process it, eventually people come back and say, you know what you were saying was right, because I don't push it onto them to say,
Right.
well, this is what it is. But I try to work with people to for them to really be able to connect and really understand where is this coming from. So giving people grace to do that. But I believe that we all have a duty now that we don't have mental health very accessible and within the spaces that we're living in. I really encourage that we take a personal time in ourselves to get to know ourselves and get to
Mm.
start to understand ourselves, to research. And you know, Togo, when you go in places like for me, social media platforms are so exciting for me because they're and even the internet itself in itself is such a wonderful resource for you to get access to so much information,
Yeah.
and there's a lot to learn. And if you notice, if you try to follow me on most of my platforms and see the pages that I follow, the things that I listen to, the things that I watch, you get to understand that most of it is part of what helps me to try to, tap onto trying to understand myself and trying to get to a space. There are times when the feelings and emotions are so intense, I don't even know what to do. So I sit with them. But I give myself that grace and say, you know what? I'm still learning. It's a lifelong process. I still get to understand myself. So seeking help is saying one thing to say people should seek help. But again, it shouldn't have to always be to the next person, but also when I sit with myself, what are the conversations that I have with myself?
Myself.
How can I help myself to feel better? Okay, I'm feeling anxious. Can I go and search on something? What can I do when I feel anxious? Can
Mm.
I read about something, take an interest? Where is this anxiety coming from? Is it connected to certain spaces? So when I get to start to get in touch, I'm happy. I'm always happy to have conversations with people around all of this. I must say, and if people are would want to have a conversation like that with me, I'm always open to that conversation anytime, any day, because that's part of what I love to do. Sometimes, yes, I might be tired, but I'll always try to make time to hear you out, and we get to have a conversation and we talk because these are things that are close to my heart, Togo. So just to share on that and say, as individuals, let's work on these things. And therapy is very hard to reach, but people like me are opening to having those conversations and processing things with you. So yeah, I think maybe let me say that.
Awesome, awesome. So everyone, this is an announcement that if you need to get in touch with Miss Margaret after, please make sure that you follow her. She's free to talk about these things even in more detail and at a personal level. And thank you so much for that. There isn't a lot of people who are, because I know that doing that with people is very hard. I do that with people, but trust me, when you listen to people's traumas, and it affects you because you're deep into that. and
Mm.
and it's not easy. You can't like feel for them, and after that you feel like, oh, this is a lot. So it's not
Yeah.
easy for people to just volunteer to talk to people like that. So thank you so much for that. So let's talk about now breaking these stereotypes. What are the steps, or what can we do as women to break these stereotypes?
Well, it's we can't do it for ourselves because we're basically in a space where we're labeled. So part of those healing, Togo, that I've said, that healing journey, it starts there. That
Mm.
healing journey where we start to heal from spaces of hurt, anger, resentment that we may have, which breed these stereotypes, which breed these personalities that we might have or grow into, is one of the first things that we need to do, because then we get to break those traits and characteristics that are associated with these. Number one, I talked about issues of being emotional. Emotions are 100% okay. Please don't get me wrong. Emotions are 100% okay, and they're very much healthy. And there are ways that we're expressing how we're feeling. Yeah. But it's the level of those emotions and how they come out that does everything needs to be moderate. When it goes beyond and it's excessive, then something somewhere is not right. So if it's something that turns out into a personality that we have, then it becomes a problem. It's okay for me to be angry now because of something that has happened. Yeah. But for me to be constantly angry all the time is not okay.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
it becomes like a trait that's attached to me to say, Margaret, hey, that one,
She's
she's
angry.
bad.
She has anger issues.
That's where we have a problem. That's a problem where we need to be able to understand where it comes from. So, as women, we need to heal from those spaces and things that we notice that are breaking us. They're stopping us from being productive, and they're continuously giving us these labels that we have. And that's something that first of all, because then it starts to break down those labels, because then the norm is changing, the characters are changing, the traits are changing. So it's going to be very difficult for people to continue holding that. Yeah. And then the other thing is for us to look at how we interact as different individuals in terms of women, not just women, but also men and women and all these, when we look at these stereotypes, when we interact and we start to attach people to these stereotypes, it's not fair, because then each and every individual is the way they are because of things that have happened to them, the experiences they've had, and all these other things. Now, to give them a label is really unfair, but what should happen is that we must be able to understand, have curiosity. What happened to you? Yeah. So
Empathy.
it's not just about someone asking you what happened to you, but also me asking myself, what happened to me?
Mm.
Okay. Because I can't just keep being this angry. I can't just keep having these intense emotions that people see. I can't just be someone who creates an environment that everyone is like, hey, what's going on? So what happened to me? I need to ask myself, what happened to me? Again, people who look at me need to understand and say, what happened to you? Not what happened to you in a way that accuses me, but is trying to understand me so that I can process myself to get to a place where I'm regulated and I'm able to heal from that place, to recover from that place.
Mm.
So those are the two very important things that we need to understand. I'm not going to go beyond all of that because it's that two-way thing. I need to make an effort within myself to look at the traits and characteristics in my behavior or in my personality that define me into those different stereotypes. And I need to be able to heal from those spaces. But more importantly, I need to ask myself, what happened to me? And I need to have people asking me what happened to me so they can understand and help me to come to a point where I realize and I'm able to understand why I'm the way I am.
Mm.
So it's not wrong that people give us these labels and things because they notice these traits and their characteristics. But the moment they continue to give me that label is the moment I'm going to stay there because I'm not being assisted to be drawn out of that space. All
Mm.
I'm being done is being accused, and that doesn't help me. It helps me to stay there because that's who I am. Then basically I sit with it. But if you help me to understand where I'm coming from, and if I sit with myself to also do the same, then I walk with myself on a journey that goes towards becoming a better version of myself that speaks to more positive and healthy ways of how I interact with the next person.
I like that. I really, really like that. We need to be curious to question some of these behaviors and traits that we carry in some of the reactions that we give to certain circumstances in the triggers. we need to really walk down the road and ask ourselves way back what happened to us. And I also appreciate that you touched about even like your family, because sometimes it's the families that we grew up in and whatever was going on in that family that made you become who you are and react to certain things the way you do. I talk about myself. I grew up in a large family, and I wouldn't say a middle child, but I'm somewhere towards the end, but not really at the end. And when I grew up feeling neglected, like nobody cared about me because there were people up there and then there were kids, babies at the end, and I was somewhere in the middle. That messed up with me so much because I felt like I wasn't getting the attention that I needed from my parents. I wasn't really getting the care that I thought I deserved, and so on and so forth. Every time I never, like, there were very few times where I got like my own new clothes. I always had like the hand-me-downs clothes, and that really messed up with me because I'm like, I don't deserve new clothes, you know? So those are kind of some of the things that we get to a point where we begin to question ourselves and our behaviors and the curiosity. So, and also you flipped it to say, when we see people behaving in certain ways, we need to render empathy and grace and really being curious in a positive way to ask, to say, what happened to you? I really want to understand this behavior, not from a judgmental place, but rather from a place of being wanting to help and support this person better to grow and to be a better version of themselves. So I really, really appreciate that. I wanna see if there is anyone with a question here, because we are getting towards the end of our time. Yep, there is someone, Foreign Affairs, Malawi. Go ahead, tell us your name if possible, and you can go ahead and mute.
Thank you so much. This is Evelyn Nyelele. I'm so sorry, I forgot to rename it.
That's okay.
But then I've joined from the office. Apologies for that. I just want to appreciate Maggie for a well elaborated presentation of what it's all about, because of course most times we know about what stereotypes are. We've been through it and we're still going through it, but it's just hard sometimes to know how best we can deal with it. So that's where my question is going to say, these stereotypes have been there, they are there now, and they'll be there. And usually men use these stereotypes on us women to hinder us from us getting elevated or from being promoted. So they'll bring in all these stereotypes to say, for instance, I'll give examples like in the workplace, with their opportunities, and there's a guy and a lady. Obviously, the majority of votes will go to the guy to say, okay, give this guy this position, director or deputy director. Meanwhile, there's a lady there who's also capable. We see these things in our office spaces where even when the opportunities like international trips and whatnot, that opportunities usually go to a guy and not a lady. A lady, most times you come as a second option, unless maybe you have a female boss who was also trying to fight that and promote fellow ladies. So then I just want to understand that, since usually this is a projection that this other gender has on us women, in as much as we also have certain stereotypes that we project on men, but now coming to us as ladies, coming to these stereotypes that these men project on us women, just to hinder us, just to demotivate us, discourage us, or to make us feel as if we're not worthy. And most times I somehow think that these are to do with psychological. And then these men really, they don't even have the time to understand. For example, it can be my case of me, Evelyn. I'm working with men in the office and I am emotional, or maybe I'm not even aware of it that I'm emotional. I'm always angry. But then these men don't even have that time to investigate or understand why Evelyn is like this. Or even myself, I don't even have this time to say, okay, why do I behave in such a way? But I'm in this workspace where I'm working with these men. So these men have labeled me to say, no, you can't give this Evelyn this opportunity because she's angry, she's emotional, she's what? Such a situation. They're not even giving me that grace to say, let's investigate, why does she behave the way she does? But yet, they've still labeled me as such. So this is just like in a case study of just an office setting. If we come to the whole national level, have regional level, when we come to AU, SADC, all these matters are there at larger extent. So then how best can we overcome these stereotypes? Because this is a thing whereby as women, we've been struggling since before we're there, now that we're in it, even after us. these stereotypes will still be there. They're still rooted to the extent that women are succumbing to the effects, to the damages that come with men pulling us down because of these stereotypes. To say, no, if a woman has this money, then it means that perhaps she's dating a man. I mean, she's dating a married man. There's no way a woman can have this much wealth. No, a woman cannot get such a type of a position. It means that the woman did ABC, ABC, you know. There are all those battles that as women we have to fight. And these battles are there when you hear of cases of so many ladies who are struggling in these, especially workplaces. That's where you get to have all these issues. So yeah, I just want to know that going forward then, how best can we overcome these stereotypes? Because knowing very well that these men, they don't, of course, there are a good number of men that actually know that, okay, most times the person will behave in a certain way because of a certain background or having gone through traumatic conditions. But it's not everyone that actually understands or gets it. Most men also just have this issue to say, I cannot work under a woman. We've heard of such cases whereby some lady bosses have been dismissed, or rather have been put to certain directorates because a certain boss as director is not comfortable with working with a woman under him. So how best really can we overcome this, other than obviously having these investigative case studies to say, okay, what makes women behave in a certain way that they do? Or why are women labeled emotional? How best then can we overcome this? Because then it will still be a serious issue. But then what interventions can best be applied, either at communal, regional, or global level for us to overcome really this challenge? So sorry for, I don't know if you got my question, but yeah.
No, thank you so much. I'm grateful for what you've said. You've tapped on most of them were issues that are happening, and you've tapped on a lot of issues that we see happening, and including in the work environment. Yes, investigative methods are things that are aside. It's not easy. It's something that I can work with myself, or others can work around. But the reality is that, like I said, I think if you had joined us at the beginning, I think I made a statement to say that, the challenge that we have is that society builds a woman to prepare to become that person who's going to be insecure because of these stereotypes. So because they've already labeled you as that, it's like you're already being brought up in a system that will make sure that by the time you reach that level, you're already that person who's going to be treated like that. There are several women who have, yes, hit on that, they've beat that, they've been able to overcome, but it hasn't been easy. It's really, really not easy, because like I also said at some point, it's not just the men doing this onto women, it's also women doing this onto other women. It goes both ways. And in those environments, breaking all of these things, it's a very long chain and system. If we look at our issues of gender equality and things like those, if you notice when we're talking about empowerment, very little about mental health is incorporated in those aspects, in all our interventions. Nothing like that is included in that. And it's not just about women, but it's also about men, because the perspective that is given to men in terms of the attitude, how they need to look at a woman, because they've seen a father do that to a mother, or they've seen a brother do that to a girl. They've seen it happen. Their friends doing the same thing. It's influence that has come from those circles, the conversations that they have, and they get to be told, this is what you must do as a man, this is what you must not do as a man, and this is how you must treat a woman, this is how you must not treat a woman. But I think those are conversations that we still need to really keep having, because also men equally have their own fair share of trauma and issues that they have with women. Sometimes it's not even about you as a woman. Sometimes they don't want you as a female boss because a woman in their past of their life did something to them. So it's also about us also giving them grace to understand where are they coming from, what background are they also coming from, and addressing those issues. Because the challenge is when we are dealing with equality and equality and women empowerment, we've really left out the aspect of mental health in all of this. We've really put it behind. And maybe that's why we're not progressive, because we're not trying, we're just telling a woman, go to school, go and get your paper. And that is happening every single day. A woman is getting a paper. They're achieving something. And they're going into the same offices that you're talking about. It's happening every single day. But where are we missing it is where we should be asking ourselves. Because the aspects of mental health, what are we telling the boys? What are we telling the men? How are we helping them understand where they're also equally coming from and how they look at that perspective? And sometimes also we feel victimized. Sometimes we feel victimized as women, but sometimes we also need to critically analyze the issues as well and look at it from a perspective of saying, is this happening to me because I'm a woman? Or is it because there's certain traits maybe that I miss out on certain things? So sometimes we also push it on ourselves and think, okay, everything is always an attack on us as a woman. But to also be honest with ourselves and critically analyze ourselves and say, you know what, I have this problem. People maybe are not giving me these opportunities because of that behavior and trait that I have. Like you said, I'm glad you shared that example of being someone who's angry within the environment. It means I'm not creating a conducive environment that I can work with other people. So then what happens? People will not involve me or include me in things. So I also need to sit with myself and say, what are some of the traits those toxic traits that I may have that I need to work on? What are those areas? And so I come up with a more positive attitude and feeling towards the people that are the environment that I'm working in. I'm not attacking anyone. I hope you understand me, but it's also a two-way street. We have to work on ourselves. The others also have to work. So when moving forward, we need to scale up mental health in all our interventions and all issues that we're trying to deal and address, because most of these things, they stem from those spaces. What are we teaching the children? We are just saying, okay, get education, but what are we really teaching them? Are we differentiating between a man and a woman right from the time when they're born in terms of responsibility and things that need to happen? And that's how people project the same things when they go into the work environment, because in the home environment, the woman was never appreciated. So why should they learn to appreciate a woman now that they are working together? It's going to be very difficult. So all these things, they come from those places. But unless we break those things and try to understand also where people are coming from and respecting also that space, which is very hard, of course. But with time, trying to have that understanding and grace towards one another, regardless of whether we're male and female, it makes things more productive, because it refrains us from being people that would want to wage war or start arguments. But in terms of understanding one another and our backgrounds, so we can learn to coexist better and to provide those spaces. In a nutshell, I think that's what I can say. I can't address everything that you've said, but there's a lot desired of things that we need to really do. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Miss Margaret. Yeah, I think if there is one thing that we really need to do as people, everyone's responsibility is to bring mental health conversations in our spaces, at home, in the work environment. And really, when we talk about mental health, is not like that, like that extreme form of mental health illness, but rather even like just talking about traumas and where we've come from and the things that trigger us. One of the things that I do personally is that when someone says something about me, I don't really take that as my reality, but I begin a journey of really asking to say, what made them say that about me? What is it that I showed them that made them comfortable to call me that? Not that I'm taking that as a reality, but it's that, deep understanding of self and beginning to question, to say, what did I show them that made them? And sometimes I go back and say, hey, excuse me, you said this about me. I just want to understand, what did I do? What did I show you that made you to look at me? Sometimes those conversations are very uncomfortable, because you have to be ready to be vulnerable, and you have to be ready to hear things that people would say about you that you don't want to hear. But sometimes those kind of feedbacks are the ones that groom us and grow us to become better. So I really like that. All right, unless if there is any question, going once and going twice. I really appreciate you, Miss Margaret. So maybe before we close, I just want you to give us your final word, and tell us how we can find you. Where are you on social media? What's your usernames? Which social media platforms do you go to? Because we want to know, what are you listening to? What are you reading? What books are you reading? What are those people, influencers, like content creators that you're following on YouTube? Because we want to follow those people too.
Okay. Maybe without wasting time, then people can just follow me. But I go by the name Margaret Tendai Mwale, I think, in all my my handles, so people can find me. I also try to work around promoting issues of social work and mental health, partly in the same space. So I also manage and work with a couple of people. We came together and we do this community impactful social workers community on Facebook. It's a page that we have, and we talk about different things, social work related, some mental health related, different things that affect basically our day-to-day living, but even more for social workers. So if people want to find me in those spaces, you can always find me and reach out. I also, provide psychosocial support if people need it, if need be. So I'm always open to that. And maybe just to say now, my last remarks, Togo, are that I just want us all to sit with ourselves, honestly with ourselves, and really look at these toxic stereotypes. What are these stereotypes that we have as a woman or we've been through? And to look at them and the traits that we have within ourselves, to say, do they really align with these stereotypes? And why do they align with those stereotypes? Where do they come from? And how can we better ourselves so that we can become better versions of ourselves that remove those stereotypes so that we can do better? And we stop labeling people. We stop labeling ourselves. We stop labeling people. We stop labeling ourselves. We give ourselves better, stereotypes that are more positive, more productive, and to do better. I mean, to keep doing better, because we can never truly be empowered. So this is from me. You will never be truly empowered until you break those stereotypes. And that begins with working with yourself and trying to remove barriers that really promote those stereotypes to be attached to you as a person. And that has to start by healing from past experiences, from your trauma, and working around trying to be more understanding and graceful for yourself and for next people. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ms. Margaret, for such a wonderful session today. I think this has been very unique in a way that we've talked about mental health from a very different lens altogether. And this is, I think, the first time we've had this kind of conversation in this webinar series. And I really appreciate you for that. And thank you so much for making time for this, because I know that you're busy, you're working, you're doing so many things, and I appreciate you making time for us, for each one of us. We're going to reach out to you because I think you, we want to reach out to you. So we're going to reach out to you. Please say yes to our friends' request and everything else. I wanted to thank you for the amazing work that you're doing in the community, because I already follow your pages and I've seen the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for that. That's raising communities and really like raising the next generation. And I think you're doing amazing. I wish you all the best. And for everyone, thank you so much for being here. We have another webinar, I think, coming up tomorrow. We're really excited for that and we're looking forward to that. And I hope you'll be here again with us. Thank you and have a blessed day. Thank you.